Why do dogs bark?
Dogs bark to communicate with other dogs and with humans. Dogs are descendants of wolves, which are social animals that live in packs. And they share many of the behaviors that define the complex relationships that exist within such animal groups. Few domestic dogs live together in packs, though they often consider their human family their group. But they still use complicated behaviors that involve smell, sight, and hearing to communicate. A dog has many scent-producing glands that it uses to communicate. The scent that a dog leaves behind, in its urine, feces, and paw prints, can reveal its sex, age, and even its mood to other dogs that come sniffing by. A dog uses its posture, facial expression, and ear and tail position to communicate with other dogs, too. And it uses its voice to communicate by whining, growling, howling, or barking. A dog usually whines or whimpers when it is in distress, when it is hungry, cold, or in pain. Growls indicate that a dog is angry and ready to fight. Howls and barks usually show excitement. In the wild, wolves and other canines use howling and barking to call together the pack for a hunt, for feeding, or to warn against danger. When wolves were tamed, or domesticated, between 12,000 and 14,000 years ago, the less dangerous ones were kept to act as guard dogs, to help in hunting, or to herd other domesticated animals. Barking was a useful trait, a handy alarm system that let their human masters know of approaching intruders, prey, or predators. This desirable trait was bred into new dogs. This means that the owners would arrange for two dogs who barked a lot to mate, producing a litter of pups with a tendency to bark often. Then those pups would be bred with other pups who liked to bark, and so on. Over time, domesticated dogs came to use their barks to communicate with their owners. Today, your pet dog barks when it's excited, needs attention, or wants something. It uses its bark to communicate much more than it would if it were living in the wild.
Why are some plants poisonous?
Plants can't run away from predators, animals that will eat them, so some have developed other methods of defense. Many plants have some poisonous parts. The leaves of a rhubarb plant are extremely dangerous to eat. For example, though its stems are quite harmless and tasty. Scientists believe that plants often have one poisonous part to keep predators away, while other parts remain harmless and safe for animal pollinators.
What is a black hole?
A black hole is an invisible region of space that is thought to have such intense gravity that not even light can escape. Scientists believe that a black hole is created when a giant star collapses in upon itself as it dies. A star lives as long as it can burn fuel. The burning of fuel acts as a counterforce against gravity. Without that counterforce, a star's gravity would cause it to collapse in on itself. So when that fuel runs out, gravity takes over and crushes the star. If the star is large enough and has a strong enough force of gravity, it will become a black hole when it collapses. While the existence of black holes can't be proven by direct observation, because they are invisible, their effects on light and matter which are pulled inside and disappear can be seen. Scientists have discovered evidence of several black holes in our galaxy, the Milky Way. And they believe there may be millions more that they haven't yet identified.
Why must I always wear a helmet when riding a bike?
While riding bicycles is a lot of fun, it is important to remember that bikes are not just toys. They are machines that can sometimes be involved in accidents that result in injury. So all bike riders as well as inline skaters and scooter riders must follow certain rules for their own safety and the safety of others. Bicyclists have to follow some of the same traffic laws that people who drive cars do, like stopping at stop signs and obeying traffic lights. But bike riders also have their own special set of safety rules. They have to make sure that their bikes have reflectors in order to ride safely at night. They can't let other people ride with them like on bicycle handlebars because that threatens their balance and could lead to accidents. One of the most important of all bicycling safety rules is wearing a protective helmet. Head injuries are the leading cause of death in bicycle crashes. About 300 children die in bike accidents each year. Another 17,000 to 18,000 children in bike accidents suffer brain injuries that sometimes cause very serious and even lifelong problems. So it doesn't matter where you will be riding or for how long, you should always wear your helmet. Accidents are called accidents because they are unexpected and can happen at any time. If your friends don't wear helmets when you bicycle together, teach them by your wise example. In the United States, bicycle helmets save one life every day and prevent one head injury from happening every 4 minutes.
What causes the seasons?
Earth's complete orbit around the Sun takes about 365 days, or 1 year. During the course of the orbit, Earth tilts on its axis. When the northern end of Earth tilts toward the Sun, it receives more of the Sun's direct rays. These rays warm the northern hemisphere and its summer season arrives. At the same time, winter comes to the southern hemisphere, which then receives less direct solar rays. As Earth continues its orbit through the year, it tilts on its axis in the other direction. Then the winter season comes to the northern hemisphere, and the southern hemisphere enjoys summer. This tilt of Earth also explains why the length of days varies throughout the year. In the summer, more direct solar rays give us longer days.
How big were the largest dinosaurs?
Information about dinosaurs changes all the time as new bones are found and new evidence about their surroundings becomes available. Each year, scientists discover around 7 new types of dinosaurs. The dinosaur now considered the largest could be pushed out of first place by another creature soon to be discovered. The largest dinosaurs belong to the group called sauropods. These giant plant eaters include the Apatosaurus, pronounced Apatosaurus. Used to be called Brontosaurus, and Brachiosaurus, pronounced Brachiosaurus. Which weighed around 80 tons, that's 160,000 pounds, or 72,640 kilograms, and stood 50 feet, 15 meters, tall. Among the longest of these dinosaurs were the Seismosaurus, pronounced Syzmosaurus, and Supersaurus. The Seismosaurus may have been as long as 150 feet, 45 meters. While the Supersaurus may have stretched to nearly 100 feet, 30 meters. A newly discovered dinosaur, called Paralitidan, is thought to have been close to 100 feet. 30 meters, long, weighing close to 70 tons, 140,000 pounds, or 63,560 kilograms. The upper bone of its forelimb, front leg, is 6 feet, 7 inches long, close to 2 meters. The Argentinosaurus, thought to weigh as much as 100 tons, 200,000 pounds, or 90,800 kilograms. Was uncovered in the late 1990s in Argentina, which was home to many of the world's largest dinosaurs. These gentle giants were once thought to live in watery, swampy regions. But recent evidence suggests that most of them were forest dwellers who ate leaves from the tops of trees. They had enormous bodies, very long necks, relatively small heads, and thick, tree trunk-like legs, much like an elephant's legs. They moved very slowly and didn't have many ways to defend themselves. But their tremendous size kept most predators away.
Why do people sweat when they're nervous?
Feelings of nervousness or excitement trigger certain responses in your nervous system, including the production of certain hormones that activate sweat glands. The sweat glands most likely to respond to such hormones are those in your armpits and the palms of your hands. Many people refer to sweating in these conditions as breaking out in a cold sweat.
How does a vacuum cleaner pick up dirt?
A vacuum cleaner is run by an electric motor that turns a fan at an extraordinarily high speed, about 25,000 revolutions, or full turns, per minute. This spinning creates an area in front of the fan that has lower air pressure than normal a partial vacuum, from which the appliance gets its name. Surrounding air rushes into the partially empty space caused by the whirring fan, carrying small particles with it as the vacuum cleaner runs over dirty surfaces like carpet and furniture. The air usually passes through a suction head or attachment and then a filter, where dirt and dust are trapped in a collection area that can be emptied. The rush of air continues through the fan, which blows it out of the vacuum cleaner.
What is puberty?
Puberty is a time of tremendous change, physical and emotional, that everyone experiences on his or her way to becoming an adult. After the many changes of puberty, people are physically able to reproduce, or have children. Though it takes many more years to develop the emotional maturity required for such a decision. While there are many common elements, every person experiences puberty a little bit differently. And kids go through the changes of puberty at all different paces. Some develop early, others late. Girls experience different changes than boys. Puberty can be exciting, but it can also be confusing, scary, and lonely. The changes associated with puberty are triggered by the release of certain hormones. Primarily estrogen for girls and testosterone for boys, that signal the body to grow and change. Puberty usually starts between the ages of 8 and 13 for girls and between 10 and 15 for boys. Though it's normal for some kids to develop later. During puberty, kids' bodies will not only grow taller, they will also change their basic shapes. Hair that was formerly soft and downy in places like the armpits, genital area, and, for boys, the face begins to grow in thicker and darker. During puberty, girls develop breasts, their waists get narrower, and their hips broaden. Some girls are alarmed to notice that they gain weight or fill out during puberty, but this change is normal and healthy. It's not a good idea to try to counteract the normal growth of puberty with dieting. The female hormones released at puberty eventually trigger menstruation. During each menstrual cycle, which is usually about a month long, an egg is released from one of two ovaries in a girl or woman's body. If the egg were fertilized by sperm, it would implant in the uterus or womb, and eventually grow into a baby. The uterus prepares for pregnancy each cycle by creating a lining of extra tissue and blood that would nourish a growing fetus. If the egg is unfertilized, that lining is expelled through the vagina. A missed period could be a normal occurrence. Many women have irregular cycles, or it may be a sign of pregnancy. Boys' bodies change in different ways during puberty. They get broader shoulders, more developed muscles, and larger penises and testes. Their faces change to look more adult, and their voices deepen as well. Kids going through puberty often notice emotional changes that accompany the physical transformation. Part of the emotional roller coaster of puberty comes from the hormones coursing through your body. And part of it is just confusion and fear about changing from a kid to an adult. It's important to remember, though, that everyone goes through it. And often it can really help to talk about these feelings with a friend or a trusted adult.
Why are there so many insects?
There are so many insects because they are essential to life on Earth and play many important roles in keeping our planet healthy. Most of the world's flowering plants, about 80%, are pollinated by insects. Insects carry pollen from the male parts of a blossom to the female parts of another plant's flower, allowing reproduction. Most of our fruits and vegetables are the result of this kind of plant reproduction. Insects also feed on the remains of dead plants and animals, keeping our environment clean and returning nitrogen, carbon, and other valuable elements to the soil in their waste. In addition, insects are a vital part of Earth's food chain, providing nourishment for one another. There are many thousands of insect-eating insects, as well as for reptiles and amphibians, for birds and fish, and for mammals, such as mice and bats. In many parts of the world, insects even make up an important part of the human diet.
Why do clothes for men and women have their buttons on different sides?
Most people, about 90%, are right-handed, and it is easiest for them to button their clothes from left to right, which is the way that men's buttons are arranged.
Why do I pee?
Food provides the energy that you need for your body systems to run smoothly. Once food is broken down during digestion into small bits of useful substances called nutrients, it passes into your bloodstream. While circulating through your body, nutrients are absorbed by your cells, where they are used for processes that release energy. As nutrients and energy are used up, chemical waste products are left in your cells. These must be removed or the cells will eventually die. So the cells release waste into your bloodstream, the body's transportation system, which take the waste to your two kidneys, containing more than 1 million microscopic filters each. Your kidneys remove waste products like urea from your blood, along with any extra body water. The waste and water mixture that the kidneys produce is called urine. It travels through tubes called ureters to your bladder, a flexible, balloon-like structure where urine is temporarily stored before you urinate, or pee. when your bladder has about 1 cup of urine in it. Stretch sensors located in its wall send fullness signals to your brain, which then directs you to empty it.
What is a hurricane?
A large and fierce storm, a hurricane starts in the tropical areas of the Pacific, North Atlantic, or Indian Oceans, where it gathers great quantities of moisture and thermal energy, or heat. It is circular in shape, spiraling inward toward a nearly calm center that is called the eye of the hurricane. A hurricane may blow inland, where its high winds, ranging from 75 to 200 miles 121 to 322 kilometers per hour. And hard rain can cause terrible damage and coastal flooding. A hurricane might spread over an area up to 600 miles, 966 kilometers, wide and last for well over a week. Once a hurricane moves over cooler ocean waters or land, though, it begins to lose its strength. In some parts of the world, hurricanes are called typhoons.
Why do I have to take a bath or shower?
Taking a bath or shower does a number of things. It removes some of the germs that your body comes in contact with throughout the day. Germs that come from the air you pass through and from the objects, animals, and people you touch. A good washing of the skin also removes some of the dead cells that makes up its surface, allowing newer cells to take their place. Washing removes odors that may be caused by sweating, along with water and salt. Perspiration contains waste products from body processes. Certain sweat glands called apocrines release a kind of sweat that can become particularly strong smelling. Today we also wash to look good. Washing with soap and water is the best way to avoid oily, dirty skin and hair, and it's generally agreed that those are things we want to avoid. But that wasn't always what people thought. Over the centuries, different people in various parts of the world have done crazy things in the name of personal cleanliness and beauty. A few thousand years ago, for instance, people in Europe washed themselves with mud, scraping it off with an iron tool. They then rubbed oil on themselves because oily skin was considered attractive. And long ago the Gauls of what is now southern France tried to make themselves more appealing by stiffening their hair with a mixture of fat and ash. Unexpectedly, they found that when combined with water their hair mixture made a good soap.
How is a pony different from a horse?
A pony is exactly like any other horse. The only difference is its size. Officially, a pony is any small horse that measures under 14.2 hands. About 57 inches or 145 centimeters, high at the withers, the ridge between the shoulder bones. The hand is the standard unit used to measure a horse's height, it equals 4 inches. Most ponies, however, are only around 26 inches, 65 centimeters, high. Beginning about 5,000 years ago, people began to tame or domesticate wild horses. Over time, they bred the animals to serve certain purposes. This selective breeding was done by mating male and female horses with special characteristics like size or speed that would then appear in their offspring. Some horses were bred to be large and strong. These were used to carry knights in heavy armor or as work horses to pull heavy carts or farm equipment. Some horses were bred to be swift and were used for hunting or racing. Ponies were mostly bred in the British Isles, where pasture land was scarce. Smaller horses have smaller appetites and don't require as much land for grazing. Despite their small size, ponies were bred to be sturdy and hard-working. They were sometimes used to pull carts filled with ore. The natural materials from which metals are made, through the small tunnels in mines. They were also bred to have gentle natures. This feature, along with their size, make them ideal for children to ride.
What are the reflectors on my bicycle for?
Reflectors help protect you when you are riding your bicycle in the dark. When a car approaches you, the light waves produced by its headlights hit your reflectors and bounce back into the eyes of the driver, making him or her aware of where you are and helping that person drive past you carefully. Reflectors are located at the front and back of your bike, as well as on your pedals. That way you can be seen regardless of the direction in which you are heading. Reflectors are usually made of hard-colored plastic with a backing of reflective material. The inner surface of the plastic is cut into many tiny angles, kind of like the sides, or facets, of a diamond. These bounce light waves around inside before they are reflected away. Which explains why reflectors are so startlingly bright. When you ride your bike at night, it is also a good idea to wear reflective clothing, with strips of material or tape attached that bounce back light. Light-colored clothing will also make you more visible. And if you have to bicycle in the street, travel along the right side of the road, in the same direction that traffic goes. Be especially careful when cars approach, because their drivers may still not see you, despite your reflectors.
Why does the skin on my fingers and toes wrinkle when I'm in water for a long time?
The wrinkles that you see on your fingers and toes when you've been in water a long time may make you think that your skin is shriveling and shrinking, just like a raisin. but actually the opposite reaction is taking place. Your skin is expanding. The tough outer layer of skin is thickest on your hands and feet, because those parts get the most wear. This outer layer absorbs water easily once the oily coating on your skin gets washed away in the bath or while swimming. The skin on your fingers and toes soaks up water and expands. Once the water is no longer under your skin, that expanded skin wrinkles up. But those wrinkles don't last long once you get out of the water.
Why do certain smells have such powerful links to our memories?
Memory is important when it comes to identifying a smell. We are not born knowing what different scents mean. We have to learn to associate the smell of freshly baked cookies with something we like to eat, or to link the smell of burning wood with a nearby fire. But the link between memory and smell goes beyond identifying what that smell is. Sometimes a scent can bring back a memory very powerfully, even a memory that was buried deeply. Scientists aren't sure why this happens, but they do know that the scent organs are connected to the limbic system, the part of the brain that controls memory and emotions. Some experts believe that the memories recalled by scent, as opposed to those recalled by seeing a familiar face or hearing music, for example, seem stronger because they are linked to emotions. Studies have shown that people who are exposed to a certain scent while feeling especially happy or nervous will notice a return of those feelings when they smell that scent at a later date. Related studies have shown that when people learn something studying for an exam, for instance while smelling a specific aroma, they can remember more of what they learned when they smell that same aroma later.
What causes growing pains?
Growing pains usually refers to the aches and pains that children feel in their legs at night when they are lying in bed. Kids seem to get them during growth spurts, times when they are growing a lot. Doctors think that the tendons, the tough elastic straps, or bands, that attach muscles to bones of affected children do not grow quite as fast as their bones do. The tendons eventually catch up, but in the meantime this condition puts muscles under extra stress during an active day and causes them to ache and even spasm, contract abnormally, when they are finally at rest at night. Growing pains are not dangerous. They don't bother children during the day, and they usually come and go at nighttime. Regular stretching exercises keeping the muscles and tendons relaxed often solve the problem for good. But if the pains are very bad and continue for a long time, a doctor should be seen. In rare cases, an infection, disease, injury, or unnoticed malformation of the legs is causing the problem.
What causes snoring?
When people breathe through their mouths rather than their noses when they sleep, Because the nasal passageways are swollen or stuffed for some reason, snoring may occur. The rough, hoarse snoring noise results when the soft tissue at the back of the roof of the mouth, called the soft palate, vibrates during breathing. Males snore far more often than females. Scientists think that may be because men are generally bigger and have more tissue in their soft palates. Some people snore so loudly that they wake themselves up.
How do helicopters fly?
Although a helicopter doesn't have wings like an airplane, it uses the same principle of lift to rise and maneuver in the air. The blades of a helicopter's propeller-like top rotor are shaped just like a plane's wings, flat on the bottom and rounded on the top, and are likewise adjustable. Instead of rushing forward through the air like a plane does to gather enough lift to fly, a helicopter moves only its 3 to 6 rotor blades, which are attached to a central shaft driven by an engine. The rotor blades slice through enough air, creating the changes in surrounding air pressure that produce lift to achieve flight. Adjusting the angle at which the rotor blades are set helps control a helicopter's lift and manner of flight. Because the angle of the rotor is adjustable, too, a helicopter has far greater maneuverability than an airplane. Besides moving up, down, and forward, it can fly backwards and hover in the air. One problem with a helicopter's design is the spinning force of its main rotor. As the rotor blades of a helicopter turn, its shaft pushes back on the craft, trying to spin it in the opposite direction. The helicopter would spin out of control if it were not for an equal, counteracting force. This force is supplied by a second, smaller rotor located vertically on the craft's tail. Acting like a propeller, the thrust from this rotor pushes the tail in the direction opposite the twisting force of the main rotor. A helicopter pilot can adjust the thrust of this tail rotor in order to turn his or her craft. Some large helicopters that carry heavy loads have two top rotors, which supply twice as much lift. In such cases there is no need for a tail rotor because each horizontal rotor spins in an opposite direction.
What is air?
Air is a mixture of gases that circle Earth, kept in place by gravity. Air makes up Earth's atmosphere. The air we breathe is 78% nitrogen gas, 21% oxygen, 0.9% argon, and 0.03% carbon dioxide, along with water vapor, floating molecules of water. Also present are traces of other gases and tiny bits of dust, pollen grains from plants, and other solid particles. As our atmosphere extends higher and higher above Earth, toward outer space, air becomes thinner and the combination of gases in the air changes.
Can a wish made on a shooting star come true?
Except for people who watch the skies a lot. Like weather specialists or astronomers, it is rare to spot a shooting star. The period of time that meteors are incandescent heated by friction with Earth's atmosphere and made to glow usually lasts only a second or two before they burn up. For hundreds of years, when people saw things in the sky that were rare or unusual like shooting stars or comets, they thought that they were signs from their god or gods predicting events, both good and bad, that would soon occur in their lives. Even though modern science has now provided us with practical explanations about what occurs in the sky, it can still be fun to believe once in a while that our lives are connected with what goes on up there. It doesn't hurt to make a wish sometimes. Wishing for something helps us come up with ways to turn a wish into a reality. But shooting stars have no special powers that help wishes come true.
Why do some snakes rattle?
Scientists believe that rattlesnakes shake the rattles at the end of their tails as a warning of their presence. Snakes would rather warn potential enemies away than get involved in a fight. And most creatures familiar with rattlesnakes would probably rather flee than tangle with a rattler. Rattlesnakes might also shake their rattles to attract small birds that could mistake the rattling for a buzzing insect and swoop down for a bug snack, only to be caught themselves by the snake. The rattle is a series of small, hard segments made of dried skin. Each time the rattlesnake sheds its skin, or molts, another segment is added. In its first few years of life, a rattlesnake may molt 3 or 4 times a year. In adulthood, rattlesnakes molt less often. Counting the rattles is not an accurate measure of a snake's age, because it's common for some of the rattle segments to break off. Most adult rattlesnakes have between 6 and 10 rattle segments.
Why do we measure things differently than most people in the world?
Different systems of measurement are used in the world today, with the two most important being the metric system, or International System of Units, SI, and the English units of measurements. From ancient times, people have always used various units to measure the weight, volume, and length of things. A certain number of plant seeds might make up a unit that measured weight, for instance, and then that unit could be used to measure other things besides seeds. The measurement of a body part might have been used to create a unit that showed length. The length of an inch, for example, came from either the width of a man's thumb or the distance from the tip of a man's finger to the first joint. The yard came from the length of a man's arm from nose to fingertip, and the foot from the size of a man's foot. But until these units were standardized, with a set unit of weight or length agreed upon. Measurement was unreliable, because seeds and people come in all sizes. As late as the 18th century, the same measurement units varied from place to place. But French scientists began a movement around that time to have a single, precise measurement system used by all countries throughout the world. They called it the International System of Units, and it is based on the metric system, where all measurement units are multiples of 10. The meter is the standard unit of length, and the kilogram is the standard unit of mass, or weight. Bit by bit, this system of measurement was officially adopted for use by all the countries of the world, except for the nations of Liberia, Myanmar, also known as Burma, and the United States. Many people believe the United States should switch to the metric system. But the complicated process of changing from one measurement system to another usually takes a number of years. In the United States, most people still use an older and more complicated measurement system called the English units of measurements. That standard unit of length is the yard and the pound is the standard unit of mass, or weight. Measurements can be changed from one system to another using mathematical equations or a conversion chart. While the metric system is being used more and more in the United States, particularly in the scientific community, there has still been no official move to adopt it.
Do groups of stars form pictures in the sky?
Since ancient times, people have noticed certain bright stars in the sky that are arranged in recognizable groupings. Often a grouping reminded these ancient people of the shape of an animal or an object, or the stars' shapes reminded them of one of their gods. Ancient Greek astronomers gave these groupings called constellations many of the names that we still use today. Some examples are Leo the lion, Corona the crown, and Orion, a character from Greek mythology. Altogether, scientists have identified 88 constellations in the sky. Though their visibility varies with the time of the year and the location on Earth of the observer.
Why are there different religions?
From our earliest days, many people have believed in a power or powers greater than themselves. This belief is known as religion. In ancient times, it was a way to make sense of the mysteries of the natural world. Evil spirits were thought to be responsible for bad weather and disease, for instance. Ancient peoples felt that they had a measure of control over their lives when they made offerings and prayed to friendly spirits, whom they believed could help them win battles or grow better crops. Even today, when people know the scientific explanations for such things as thunder or the eruption of volcanoes, many look to religion to explain some of the other hard-to-understand things that we experience as humans, things like the purpose of life or the reasons for tragedies. People look to religion and powers beyond themselves for direction. about the best way to lead their lives and for the meaning behind them. While most religions spring from the same basic human need to believe in a great power or powers, the ideas, practices, and traditions that religions involve can be very different. Long ago, groups of people separated by things like deserts, mountains, or great oceans developed special religious beliefs and forms of worship that fit their unique ways of life. Some, like the ancient Greeks, built their religions around a belief in several gods, a practice called polytheism, while others, like the Jews, believed in a single god, monotheism. Great temples, shrines, and churches were built to honor these gods, and believers showed their faith through ceremonies, sacred writings, prayers, and other forms of worship. As civilizations developed and ways of traveling long distances improved, different religions were spread by explorers, traders, settlers, and missionaries to other parts of the world. As religions spread, they were frequently changed and adapted into different forms that better fit the conditions and people of various lands. All the major religions of the world, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in the Middle East, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Sikhism in India, Taoism and Confucianism in China, and Shinto in Japan began in Asia before they gradually spread to other parts of the world. Christianity, which is based on the teachings of Jesus Christ, who preached in Palestine about 2,000 years ago, is the most widely practiced religion in the world today.
Can carnivorous plants be harmful to humans?
While some science fiction books and movies have portrayed giant carnivorous plants with an appetite for human flesh, such plants do not exist in the real world. Insect-eating plants are much more likely to be harmed by humans than to cause harm to humans. These plants capture small insects, digesting them using chemicals that are too weak to have any effect on people.
Do any mammals have scales?
Mammals are usually identified by their furry outer layer, but there are some mammals with a hard, scaly covering that makes them look more like reptiles than mammals. The pangolin, which lives in parts of Asia and Africa, is covered with scale-like plates that are actually modified hairs. Pangolins eat mostly ants and termites, foraging with their pointy snouts and their long, worm-like tongues. They protect themselves from predators by rolling themselves into a tight ball and sticking their sharp scales out. The armadillo is another mammal with an unusual outer layer, covered in protective, solid plates of armor over most of its body. The armadillo looks like an animal from prehistoric times. These shy, nocturnal animals are more likely to run away from potential enemies than to fight. When threatened, some species can pull their legs underneath their armor like a turtle retreating into its shell. And some armadillos will curl into a protective ball like the pangolin.
Why are penguins black and white?
The trademark tuxedo-like coloring of penguins, with their black backs and white fronts, is called countershading. This kind of coloration is found in many fish and other aquatic animals that swim close to the surface because it helps hide them from sight in the water. When viewed from below, the white-bellied penguin blends in with the lighter appearance of water near the surface, when seen from above. The penguin's black back can't be distinguished from the dark depths of the sea.
Why do helium-filled balloons float up in the air?
While it may seem strange, the gases that make up air have weight. A cubic yard of air at sea level, which serves as the starting point from which all measurements of elevation, ocean depth, and atmosphere begin, weighs more than 2 pounds. When a balloon is filled with a gas like helium, which weighs less than air, it floats.
If thunder and lightning happen at the same time, why don't we see and hear them at the same time?
Light from a flash of lightning travels almost immediately to your eyes. That is because light waves move very fast, at a speed of about 186,281 miles. 300,000 kilometers per second, a rate known as the speed of light. Sound waves, on the other hand, travel more slowly, about 1/5 of a mile, or 1,100 feet. 335 meters per second, though this varies with the temperature and medium through which sound is moving. So the sound of thunder reaches your ears a few seconds after you see lightning. Sometimes lightning is so far away that you cannot hear the thunder that goes with it. And sometimes thunder can be heard without seeing lightning, which may be hard to spot if it is deep within a cloud and the day is bright. A fairly accurate mathematical formula can indicate how far away a lightning strike has occurred. If you count the number of seconds between the flash of lightning and the sound of thunder and divide the number by 5, you will know how many miles away the lightning occurred. When thunder seems to follow lightning almost immediately, you know that lightning has struck very close by, and as the amount of time between seeing lightning and hearing thunder increases, you know the storm is moving farther away.
What is sap?
Sap is a term used to describe all the fluids that travel through complex types of plants. Fluids that move through transportation systems made of special xylem and phloem cells. Sap is water with substances like minerals or sugar dissolved in it. Some plants, like maple trees and sugar cane, have so much sugar in their saps that they are raised commercially to make syrup and sugar. Other plants have specialized saps that are hard or sticky, like latex, which is used to make rubber. The sticky gums and resins produced by many trees are thought to protect them from damaging insects and to seal any holes or tears that might occur in their barks.
What did people use before toothbrushes were invented?
Early in human history, people used anything that they could find to keep their teeth clean. Usually a thin, sharp object, like a stick, was used to pick out food left between teeth. Chewing on the end of certain sticks would fray the wood, making a kind of brush, which could then be rubbed across the teeth. Even today, members of primitive tribes chew sticks to keep their teeth clean. The constant chewing produces more saliva than usual, which helps wash food away. Later, people found that if they rubbed abrasive elements, like salt or chalk, across their teeth, they could get rid of grime. They also used water and pieces of rough cloth to clean their teeth. Toothpicks made of all kinds of materials also became popular. Rich people had jeweled toothpicks made of gold and silver. Toothbrushes for the wealthy, with fancy handles and hog bristles, came into use in the 18th century. Only much later, when cheaper, wooden-handled toothbrushes were made, and the importance of good dental hygiene became known, did most people start to regularly use them.
Do killer whales attack humans?
The killer whale, also known as orca, is a type of dolphin that can grow to be 31 feet. 9.5 meters, long and weigh 11,000 pounds, 5,000 kilograms. It eats fish, squid, and occasionally such sea mammals as seals and other dolphins. Despite its frightening name, the killer whale has never been known to attack a person. Killer whales are intelligent and, with their stark black and white coloring, dramatic-looking animals. They learn quickly and can perform complex tasks. Abilities that have made them a favorite at aquariums and marine parks.
What makes the wind blow?
Wind is simply air that moves along Earth's surface. Its speed, or velocity, is measured in miles per hour, mph, or kilometers per hour, kilometers per hour. The sun is largely responsible for wind patterns around the world. The pattern begins in the tropics around the equator where the sun heats the air, which becomes lighter and then rises. Cooler air rushes into the area where the warmed air was, and the process is repeated again and again. The heat of the sun along with the eastern movement, or rotation, of Earth on its axis causes this pattern of air movement around the equator. And this pattern, in turn, affects wind patterns all over the world.
What are animals?
Animals are all the creatures belonging to the kingdom Animalia, ranging in complexity from simple organisms like sponges to highly developed human beings. Some of the other kingdoms are plantae, which encompasses things like grass, trees, and flowers. And fungi, which are things like mold and mushrooms. Animals make up at least 3/4 of all the species on Earth. And they are distinguished from plants and other organisms by their ability to move. Even tiny animals have muscles and therefore can get around to find food or a mate, or to get away from enemies. While humans are animals. Often when people use the word animal, they are referring to all animals except humans. Sometimes people are referring specifically to mammals, warm-blooded creatures like dogs, cows, or lions, as opposed to birds, reptiles, or fish.
How does a fire extinguisher work?
In order for something to burn, high heat and oxygen are needed. All fuels have their own particular temperatures at which they begin to burn when exposed to high heat, called their flash points. Removing heat or oxygen from fuel will put out a fire. Water is frequently used to extinguish fires. Large supplies of water can be found almost anywhere. An important condition when dealing with large fires, like those in burning buildings. Water works in two ways to put out a fire. First, it sharply reduces the temperature of the burning material. Second, it covers the material, keeping oxygen-filled air from reaching the material. But water can't put out oil fires, because oil floats on the surface of water. An oil fire's oxygen supply can't be cut off by water. Other substances, liquids, gases, or powders that don't burn must be used to smother the fire and remove its oxygen supply. Most fire extinguishers are filled with carbon dioxide, a heavy gas that prevents burning. When released, the gas forms a type of snowy foam that both covers and cools a fire. Powdered sodium bicarbonate, what we know as baking soda, is also used in extinguishers, usually for use on oily chemical fires. It quickly melts in heat, forming a crust that keeps oxygen out. If you don't have a fire extinguisher on hand, you should always throw baking soda on a cooking fire that involves grease. Water will only spread the fire by causing splattering. Because the substance in a fire extinguisher must cover a large area very quickly, it needs to be released in a powerful spray. The extinguishing substance is stored inside the tank under high pressure, which drives it out of a nozzle with great force once it is released.
Why do some plants have thorns?
Plants have no means of escaping from hungry animals, so they develop ways to defend themselves. Some plants have poisonous parts, while others have thorns and other sharp growths to defend against animals that would want to eat them. Animals that approach such a prickly plant are painfully snagged, which discourages them from coming closer.
What is a comet?
While asteroids are made mostly of rock and minerals, comets consist of ice, particles of dirt and dust, and gases. They have been compared to gigantic dirty snowballs that orbit the Sun. As these icy bodies get closer to the Sun, the Sun's intense heat turns some of the ice in the comet's nucleus, or center, into gases. These gases, and the dust particles that used to be frozen inside them, fly off the nucleus into space, forming a gaseous outer covering of the comet, called the coma, and a long, glowing tail. While the nucleus of a comet is only a few miles across, the coma can be as big as 1 million miles. 1.6 million kilometers, in diameter, and the tail can extend for millions of miles. Usually comets can only be seen from Earth with a telescope, but sometimes, when they pass close to the Sun and are at their brightest, comets can be seen just by observing the night sky. The enormous comet Hale-Bopp passed within 122 million miles, 197 million kilometers, of Earth in 1997 and could be seen without a telescope. The famous Halley's Comet, pronounced Halley, also called Comet Halley, orbits the Sun once every 76 years. Give or take a couple years, becoming visible when it gets close to the Sun. Last seen in 1986, Halley's Comet isn't due back until 2061 or 2062. English astronomer Edmund Halley gave the comet its name. He was the first to suggest that comets traveled in regular orbits. An interesting story about Halley's Comet involves the great American author Mark Twain, whose real name was Samuel Clemens. Born in 1835, Twain came into the world in a year when Halley's Comet, then a great mystery to scientists, was visible in the sky. Fascinated by the comet's orbit, Twain later predicted that he would die in the year when the comet made its return. This prediction came true. Twain died in 1910. A year when Halley's Comet was once again visible in the night sky. When he made the prediction, Twain imagined God saying, "Now here are these two unaccountable freaks, they came in together, they must go out together."
Why do people go to jail?
One of the jobs of a government is to maintain order among its citizens. It does this by making rules known as laws. Every country has its own unique set of laws. Though there are striking similarities among the legal systems of many nations. Numerous laws involve the protection of people and their property. In democratic societies like the United States, government representatives are elected by the people to write new laws and vote on their passage. Federal law governs all residents of the country, but state and local governments can make their own laws. As long as they don't conflict with federal laws. People who break laws are punished by the government. Laws would be useless if they were not enforced and lawbreakers went unpunished. Ideally, U.S. laws are applied equally to all citizens, rich or poor, black or white, male or female. Many lawyers, judges, and police officers strive for such equality. Though sometimes people harbor prejudices against certain kinds of people or certain ethnic groups without even knowing it. Flaws do exist in the justice system, sometimes, for example, wealthy people who can afford to hire a team of expensive, savvy lawyers get special treatment in the form of lighter punishment or no punishment at all. But many of the people who have sworn to uphold our nation's laws try to do so with fairness and compassion. Regardless of the accused's race, ethnicity, or economic status. In the United States, several laws have been written to protect the rights of someone accused of committing a crime. He or she is considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Someone suspected of a crime is usually arrested and taken into custody by a police officer. Sometimes, in federal cases, for example, the case is presented before a grand jury. A group of citizens who examine the accusations made. The grand jury files an indictment, or a formal charge, if there appears to be enough evidence for a trial. In many criminal cases, however, there is no grand jury. While awaiting trial, the accused may be temporarily released on bail, which is an amount of money meant to guarantee that the person will return for trial instead of leaving the country, or kept in a local jail. Trials are usually held before a judge and a jury of 12 citizens. The government presents its case against the accused person, or defendant, through a district attorney, and another attorney defends the accused. There are strict rules about what can be used as evidence in a trial. Any evidence taken by police as a result of an illegal search of someone's home, for example, cannot be used against the defendant during the trial. If the defendant is judged innocent, he or she is released. If he or she is found guilty of committing a crime, the judge decides the punishment, or sentence, using established guidelines. The lawbreaker may have to pay a fine or go to prison or both.
Can a turtle climb out of its shell?
A turtle can no more climb out of its shell than a person can remove his or her backbone. The turtle's shell is fused, or attached, to its backbone, ribs, and parts of its shoulder and hip bones. If an empty turtle shell is found, it means that turtle has died, and its shell is all that remains.
What should you do if all your efforts in school bring disappointing results?
Don't be ashamed and don't give up. The most important thing is not how much you learn, or how fast you learn, but that you continue to learn and do your best.
Why are flowers brightly colored?
To accomplish reproduction through cross-pollination. Flowering plants must rely on other forces, as they can't move themselves. Many flowering plants depend on insects and birds to carry their pollen from one plant to the next. And these plants can attract particular animals with brightly colored or fragrant flowers. The nutritious pollen and nectar in flowers is an important part of many creatures' diets. When insects and birds visit a flower to feed, sticky pollen grains cling to their bodies. As the creatures continue to feed from flowers of other plants of the same species, they leave some of the pollen behind, and cross-pollination occurs. Many flowering plants like grasses and several kinds of trees rely on wind for pollination. This method is less reliable than the animal carrier method of cross-pollination. So wind-pollinated plants produce huge amounts of pollen grains to improve their chances of success. The large amounts of fine, dry pollen in the air are the cause of the allergies that we call hay fever. The flowers of wind-pollinated plants are usually small, plain, and not brightly colored, and many don't produce nectar, because they don't need to attract the attention of insects or other animals to help spread their pollen.